And also, if everybody could just keep themselves mute apart from whoever is speaking at whoever's hosting. So first of all, I'd like to thank you all for being here today. We're delighted to have you all here. The way we're going to work today's session is we are going to have John Hennigan is going to speak first. So John is going to speak around lean digitalization and sustainability within the workplace. Then we're going to move on to TJ Scally. So TJ is from Lean Robotics and is a master black belt in lean practices. So TJ will do a presentation on lean. Then we will move on to Callum Poole. So Callum is the head of customer experience here at Herbst, and he's going to run through a demo of our system. And you'll see, how our system and a lean practice, will link up together. And at the very end, but last but by no means least, we'll have Leanna Hilliard. So Leanna is going to go through the grants that are available for anybody who's going down the lean journey. So Leanna will touch on that at the end, and then we can have some questions and answers. But with regards to TJ, if anybody has questions, pop them in the chat box as we go along. At the end of his presentation, we'll have a couple of minutes where we'll ask some questions to TJ. So I'm now going to hand over to John Hennigan. So John, whenever you're ready, you can fire away.
Okay, you can see my screen there, Lisa?
Yep, can perfectly.
Okay, excellent. Well, welcome everybody. It's great to have you all here today. This morning, I am going to do a little introduction to Herbst Software. The main event is going to be TJ talking about lean. I'm pretty excited for that myself. But I'm just going to touch on a little bit at a high level about sustainability and digitalization, and how all those kind of things interlink, and how innovative business are taking on all of these strategies to kind of future-proof themselves. So first, I'll just kind of introduce Herbst Software. Herbst Software have been in operation for well over 20 years. They started the business, I suppose, to actually handle their other businesses. They were involved in manufacturing and agri-food, and they wanted a way to bring all of those businesses together. And the idea was to move to digital. So they were one of the early adopters of digital, I suppose, and that's where the business Herbst Software came from. It just kept on progressing from there. They found that the software they made helped some of their other clients and their other businesses, and it kept on growing. So it was kind of a business model before its time in some ways. And I feel all businesses are now looking towards digitalization, but they're also looking at lean and they're looking at sustainability. And that's kind of a zeitgeist of the day. That's the direction business is going. And if I was to bring them all together in one term, I would say that it's all to do with efficiency and about future-proofing your businesses. So how can you be here in 5-10 years' time? And what strategies are you going to adopt to make sure you are here in 5-10 years' time? I started with Herbst a couple of months ago, and I really wanted to examine what we did and how we help companies. So I came up with this chart. So we really drive digital transformation. That's what we do. But in driving digital transformation, we really work with lean transformation and the green transformation. And I'm really going to leave TJ to really go in depth today about lean. And hopefully we're going to actually have more webinars around digital transformation and green transformation. So today I'm just going to touch on the overlaps and how they all come together and how maybe Herbst or other digital technologies can help you to achieve your business strategies and business goals and be here in the future. So firstly, I'm going to go with the digital transformation, green transformation, and how they come together. And sustainability is how I would say it. Now, I know a lot of people think sustainability, it's kind of almost a dirty word in business. And, it kind of has been, it's kind of gone down some funny directions. But at the heart of it, I really think it's to take account of sustainability. And sustainability is really about survival at the heart of it. I mean, to sustain, is your business going to be here tomorrow, in 1 year, 10 years? That's what it's really about. And there's 3 pillars of sustainability. And I suppose most people go straight to environmental. That's what everybody thinks. But I always like to start with the economic pillar, because if you're not economically viable, you really won't have to worry about the environmental or the social aspect of your business because you won't be there to do it. So I suppose that's the number 1 pillar for me. But you have to look at how the economic pillar interacts with the environmental, social, and how the environmental and social help the economic pillar and how it helps your business to be there in a few years' time. If I went to the environmental pillar, I would say that everybody's aware of rising commodity prices, and everything you buy in obviously it's a resource and it comes from somewhere. And as prices increase, we really want to be cutting down our consumption of everything. We want to be doing less but more all the time. If I was just give just an everyday example, like I've been telling my mother for 20 years not to fill the kettle right to the top every time she wants a single cup of tea, and for 20 years she's been doing that. But this year she got a bill that was so big that she stopped doing it, and I think that carries across for all businesses. The way we've been doing things, it just can't happen anymore because we're being penalized with price. So it's in your interest to be environmentally concerned of maybe where your products are come from, what you're using, your water, your electricity, any products you come in, make sure you're using the absolute max. We don't want any waste. And that ties in a lot with lean, and digitalization can help with tracking all that kind of, with all those metrics. If we then move over to the social element of sustainability, then you're really dealing with people. And I suppose for any business owner here, you know that it's very important to have engaged, productive staff. And if people are not doing jobs they want, there's loads of repetition, and if they just feel like the job isn't going anywhere, it's bad for morale and it's bad for you, because an engaged employee is a productive employee that adds value. And for your business to be sustainable, you're going to want those employees. So you have to look at new strategies to keep them engaged. And digitalization helps to automate, and it helps to improve communication, it improves accountability. And all of these things really help with the general feeling and in your company. They reduce conflict and just make everything a little bit more transparent and easy. So you bring all those three things together, and you can see how, looking at the environment, the social, you're pushing your economic agenda as well. So this is top line, as I say. We can go much more into it. I could talk about it all day. So if you hear things of interest, you might join us the next time for our next webinar. So I'm just going to go on next to maybe the crossover between lean and digital transformation, and that's to do with business intelligence. So as TJ is going to tell you, he's going to tell you all about waste, and there's lots of different types of waste. You can waste your potential of employees, you can waste goods, you can waste data. And digitalization really helps with collecting data, and it lets you in real time alter your strategies, because you know exactly what's happening. You don't have to wait till your accountant gets back to you at the end of the quarter. You don't have to wait for a biannual review. If you have digital systems in place, you instantly know how you're performing, and it lets you change your performance or your processes to have a better bottom line at the end of the day. Now, I'm not going to go too much into it because TJ is really going to bring you through a lot of it, but to say that digitalization really helps with tracking data and performance when you do enact lean. And thirdly, I'm just going to talk a little bit on waste reduction, which is, of course, what we all want, and that is the core of efficiency. And that's lean and green when you bring them together. And again, I'm going to let TJ talk mostly about it, but I'm just going to show you this one chart, and it's the waste hierarchy. The last thing anyone wants to be doing is throwing anything into the bin. That is not what we want at all. That's the worst outcome. Best outcome is prevention. And with lean, you really try to prevent any waste from happening. I think you're going to see the 7 wastes with TJ later, and you're going to learn about all the different wastes and how to prevent them. And all of these things tied in together, that's going forward. That's making you profitable. You want to cut out waste at the source, and that's what lean can help you do, and it's good for the environment. So just a quick overcap of what we've looked at. Why do you want to care about lean, sustainability, and digitalization? Well, the truth is they're all on one path. They're all bringing you towards a more efficient business place. And when we're dealing with inflation, the price of commodities, the labor market's crazy right now, you want to make sure you're getting the most efficiency out of everything you're buying, because it's expensive. It's prohibitively expensive in some cases. You want to be looking after your inventory. You want to make sure that you're getting first in, first out, that you don't have things. If you're in food business, for example, you don't want food going off in your warehouse and things like that. You don't want to have your finances tied up in stock that isn't moving quickly enough, especially when there's such fluctuations in price. You really have to examine the cost of production, and you have to be as efficient as you can with it. And you have to know all your inputs and how much it's costing you to produce something. You then also have to look at how you're selling, because at the end of the day, if you're not digitalizing, if you're not moving forward, if you digitalize, say, for example, you have a website, that's a new way of selling. That means maybe you don't have to have somebody out in a car selling all day long. So that also helps your green agenda, So I'm just trying to show that all of these things interact together. There's a good relationship between all of them. And lastly, I'm going to come to legislation, because that is a big pusher of how businesses run. And I think we've seen, even last night in the news, you see the new CO2 tax. Well, what I'm advocating to business owners is that you think proactively. You don't want to be forced to do something. You want to start, you want to be taking as many measures. You want to be taking as many measures as you can now, so that you're ahead of the curve, so that you're not suddenly looking down the barrel of a gun of some legislation coming in that makes you unviable. And you have to look across all the pillars of your business and be as efficient as you can across all of your pillars, to survive, to be sustainable. And digitalization of lean can help you do that. So that's just a quick overview. I'd love to have you back again. I could actually talk about this for days, and I'm being very conscious that I have to get through it. But I'm going to put you on to TJ, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what he has to say. So thank you all for being here, and we hope to see you on some more of our webinars.
Thanks, John.
No problem at all. I'm going to stop sharing there.
Perfect. That was great, John. TJ, I'm going to share your slides for you, if that's okay. Oh, you're sharing yourself. That's perfect. No problem.
Okay. Hopefully you can see them okay.
Yeah, we can indeed.
Yeah. Okay. I was talking to myself there for a second. Good morning, everybody. My name is TJ Scally from Lean Robotics. I'm the guest speaker here today, just to talk a little bit about Lean. My journey for Lean started in Dell Computers in Limerick, going back about 20 years ago. And it's given me a great journey in my career. And I suppose I'd like to share, some of the projects I've done, some of the opportunities, and I suppose my view around Lean, which maybe is certainly different than some of the purest view around Lean that you may see out there. So I suppose I'll start by my background. As I mentioned, I started in Dell Computers. I worked in Accenture, which some of you may have heard is management consultancy, for a number of years. And about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe a little bit more, I went out on my own and started up Lean Robotics. The first thing I want to talk about is, from my perspective, I always, when I think about Lean, I always start by thinking, what is it going to do for the customer? So a recent example, I was lucky enough to take a Tesla for a test drive when they came out about, I think it was about 8 years ago now, a Tesla Model S. And it's probably the first time in my life, I'm a bit of a car enthusiast. It's probably the first time that I've actually been wowed by a car. Everything that was in, all the functionality had been rethought, redesigned, and it was basically a new way of interacting with the customer. So it's a brand new customer experience. And any of you that have driven one or have a Tesla will probably know some of the things I'm talking about. And some of the simple things, I mean, this was going back 8 years ago. I'm sure they've come on in leaps and bounds even since. But some of the simple things, like when I went to take the car for a test drive and give feedback on it, the first thing that happened was I was handed a toy car, and that toy car was the key for the Tesla. A very simple thing. However, how many years, it's 100 years now, we've been using the old key, almost the same key we use in the door we use to start a car. It seems unusual. It's never really developed. It's never really been redesigned. Similarly, if you take something simple like the door handle, you touch the door handle, it opens, or as you walk up to the car, the door handle opens. Everything has been rethought about. And, lots of ways where, as you go through the journey of owning a Tesla, even when you're a couple of years into the experience, you find new things. So for example, we found that there's 3 ways to open the charger. And one of them is by, clicking a button on the nozzle that's attached to the fuel charger, and that will open the charger on your car. So they've really thought from a holistic point of view, from end to end, all the way from, selling the car, designing the car, all the way through to the features and the customer experience. And obviously the fact that you don't have to pay for fuel is a big advantage at the moment. So, I mean, it's one of the first times in my life where I've actually had a new product or service that I've really been wowed with, where the customer experience was really amazing. And a lot of that can be linked back to Lean. There are a number of Lean tools that you can use to improve your customer experience and make sure that you're not just satisfying your customers, but actually you're delighting your customers. So that's always the first place I start is, what is it as an organization we're going to do for our customers? What's the marketplace we're trying to address? And what products or services are going to help us? Then comes some of the boring stuff. I suppose Lean is the way we look at problems is generally from a process perspective. So we always look at, and a process is nothing more than a sequence of steps or activities. And we look at what are the inputs and what are the outputs to that process. And obviously what we're trying to do is make sure that that process, whether it's producing a product or a service for a customer, always consistently meets the customer needs. And that's I suppose the way we think about process from a Lean perspective. So what are the inputs, what are the outputs, and how can we make sure we're consistently delivering for the customer as part of that output? Obviously, there's a number of people on the call. Lots of organizations have different challenges. So, you know, when you get inside an organization, what we tend to see is one of the challenges on the left-hand side. So I've listed there, I think I've grouped them into 5. So typically we find that there's some challenge around cost reduction or productivity improvement, or generating more with less, which I think I heard John mention. It might be that there's a challenge around employee engagement or retention. It might be around customer experience. It might be around digitization, or maybe it's around actually growing your market share. So what we tend to do is look at it, you know, what are the challenges in this particular organization that you'd want to address? And then on the right-hand side, you can see some of the tools, or what I like to call levers, that will help you address those problems. And obviously, you know, key message here is Lean, not everything is Lean, right? So there are, today the guy's going to talk about software and how software can help you on your journey to becoming more efficient and more productive. But there are lots of different solutions out there. And one of the first things to think about is, what's the most appropriate lever to help you address the problem you're having? So it might be Lean if you're trying to drive more efficiency or more productivity from your workforce. However, there may be other options as well. It might be that you're trying to automate more of your activity, or it might be that you've got a capability challenge and you want to, you need to deliver more training and engagement through the employees in the workforce. So that's kind of the way I think about it, is what are the biggest challenges you have, and then what levers do you want to use to address those challenges? And obviously, not all those levers are created equally. So something like Lean, you can see down in the bottom right of this chart. So this is basically a diagram looking at what sort of a level of investment would you typically need to roll out one of these initiatives, and what level of change is that going to deliver in your organization. So something like capability development, which is primarily training and building capability within the workforce. Obviously, that's got a relatively low level of investment. It's basically training costs, and the magnitude of change is relatively low. Whereas up at the higher end of the scale, you know, you've got organizational transformation. And again, it's up to organizations to decide what level of change they want to implement across their organization. And you've got everything in between. And obviously, if you go for one of the items on the bottom, which have lower levels of investment, obviously the return, or typically return you can see on the right-hand side, is what benefit we tend to get from, in terms of, for example, efficiency or productivity, from initiatives on those different tiers. So if you go and roll out a Lean program, you're certainly not going to get 50% improvement in productivity overnight, but you'll probably get 10 to 30% productivity improvement year on year if you continue to roll out a Lean program. So again, it depends on what level of change you're open to in your organization and how much money, obviously, you want to invest. And you can see that there are lots of other levers that we talked about in the previous slide that also come in here. So some organizations would choose to do some sourcing options where maybe they outsource or offshore some of their activities. or they may change around their operating model, or they may go for something like end-to-end digitization. So trying to automate as much as they can in their organization, whether that's something like invoice processing or accounts production, etc., but trying to automate as much within the organization as they can. Assuming you pick the lean as the lever that you would like to use to address the business challenge that you have, a good place, I think, to start is, thinking about what initiatives are suitable for lean, and then what sort of candidates you might want. So finding good projects or initiatives and somebody to lead those initiatives. So on the left-hand side, you can see what I would consider some of the key criteria that should be in place. And the first one I always say to organizations is, you need to have a reason to change. So you need to have a burning platform. And when I worked in Dell Computers 20 years ago, our burning platform was they could make computers cheaper in China, and we had to be able to produce them in Limerick at a cost per box equivalent to what China were producing them for, plus the transport costs, or we're probably going to go out of business. So we had a very clear burning platform, and that's why we were pretty successful with the lean initiative that happened down there at the time. And similarly, for other organizations, I've seen lots of lean initiatives that have been very successful and less successful. And I would say the most successful ones are ones that where organizations absolutely have a burning platform in place where they need to make change, or they're probably not going to survive. The other thing, I suppose, that stands out from a lean perspective is this one here around the root cause is unknown. So where lean is most powerful is it's a methodology and a structured approach. So if you know what the solution is, you should probably just go ahead and fix it. However, what we often see is people are fixing the symptoms of a problem rather than fixing the root cause. And Lean and Six Sigma and these continuous improvement tools are all about getting to the root cause of the problem and making sure that you fix the root cause so the problem doesn't come back. And that's what, I suppose, that's how Lean stands out from some of the other initiatives that are out there. John talked at the start a little bit about the software, and one of the advantages, obviously, of the software is it would make data available. So obviously, from our point of view, when we come in to do lean initiatives, it's always good when there's lots of data available, because one, it helps you identify where the problems are, whether that's productivity or cost challenges, or even things like employee engagement. If you have metrics in place across the organization, it can help you pinpoint where the problems are. But obviously the other benefit is, as you make your improvements, you want to see what impact that change had on your key metrics. And so tracking those metrics over time on a scorecard or on a dashboard is obviously key. And that's one of the things, I guess, that software would help with. On the right-hand side, you can see some of the, I suppose, some of the skills we would look for within the candidates that we select. So generally you want somebody who's very customer focused. Obviously, they're going to have some training in Lean Six Sigma or continuous improvement or operational excellence. And obviously, they need to have some influencing skills, because they're going to have to make change and influence change across the organization. So there are some of the criteria you would need, and some of the skills that obviously you would look for in the organization. One of the tools you may have heard of or come across, I'm sure lots of you have lean initiatives that you've started already. One of the tools you'll hear being used is value stream mapping. Again, if a very purist lean person looked at my value stream map, they may not be that impressed. I don't follow all the standards. What I tend to do, so what you can see here is one we did for an organization actually in Dublin, going back about 8 years ago. It was looking at, it was an asset management and leasing company. And we were looking at the length of time it took from the time we got documentation in from corporate customers to the time we released funds to the corporate customer. And what we tried to do is do it within a day. And you can see that on the top, we mapped out the process, relatively high level. You can see that there was a large number of steps involved. We generally look at those steps in the process, try and identify whether they're value add or non-value add steps in the process, try and eliminate them where we can, or combine them, or reduce them. And then we got to an interim stage, which in our case was, we used some lean tools to eliminate some of the non-value add activities. And then we had what we call a future stage, and future state involves some technology. And obviously to get to there would take some time. So we moved from a current state to an interim state to planned future state. And you can see down the bottom some of the metrics of where we got to for that organization. You can see at the start, it was taking about a cycle time from the time we got into documentation to paying out the funds. It was taking about 2 days at the start. And at the end, when we had all of our changes implemented, both our process changes and our technology changes, you can see that we got that down to about 4 hours. And that was over the space of about a year. So these things are not something that were going to come quickly, but you can see some of the benefits there. And similarly on the processing time, so the amount of time that people were spending processing the applications, you can see that there was a corresponding, not as big, but there was about a 35% reduction in the processing time. And that was all achieved through a number of lean initiatives that sat behind this to track the progress and basically drive waste out of those processes that were involved. I don't like to spend too much time on the tools, because usually when I go into organizations, they have heard a little bit about some of the tools. And tools is not the most important part from a lean perspective by any means. The culture of the organization and building a culture of continuous improvement, I would say, is a lot more important than the tools that actually sit behind it. But you do have to use some tools as you go along. One of the tools I always use is what's called value add, non-value add analysis. So mapping out all the steps in the end-to-end process. And the green bars are basically the value add steps, and the red bars on the screen are the non-value add. So you can see in most organizations we would work with, about 90% of the time is spent on what I would classify, or what we would classify as non-value add activities, something the customer is not willing to pay for. And about 10% of the time is spent on the value add activities. And what's typically happened in the past is people focus on the value add activities and they try to make them more efficient. What lean primarily does is focus on trying to remove the non-value add, or the 90%, which I would say is similar to working smarter rather than working harder. If you try and reduce the green bars, you're working harder. If you try and eliminate the red bars, you're working smarter at a relatively high level. John mentioned, one of the other tools you can use to identify waste in your process is, and generally we would recommend to organizations to eliminate some of the waste before they build IT solutions. Because obviously once you build IT solutions, it's then more difficult to remove the waste. So remove the waste first, then you have your processes mapped and use that as part of your business requirements to build your technology solution. So you can see on the right-hand side is 7 waste, which is often called 8 waste now, because there's skills have been added or unused skills in the organization. But you can see here, it's another way of looking at each of the different steps in your process and asking the question, is there transport waste at this step? Is there delays or waiting? Is there overproduction where we're actually producing stuff that goes into stock that we never use? Are we over processing? So are we doing too many checks, for example, which is often when we see that are not adding any value? Or are we doing additional steps in the process that are not adding any value for the customer? And obviously defects, where we have to go back and rework, is an example of a type of waste where we should actually be obviously eliminating the defects and trying to do it right first time. And there are a number of lean tools like mistake proofing that can help you eliminate defects and make sure that they don't happen in the first place. Earlier I mentioned one example of a client we worked with in Dublin 8 years ago. CIT was the name of the company. You can see here when we started off, they were tracking at about 10% funded same day, which is the key metric that we were trying to improve. Obviously using data, we were able to display that over a period of time. I think this was over about 6 months time period. This was kind of the first 6 months of the project. Our goal was to take it up to 50%. And then there was another initiative that followed on from this, which basically took it to 90%. So we got up from about 10% funded same day to about 90% funded same day over a long period. It was a period of about a year. And the reason we focused on that metric was when we went out to customers and asked them, what are you unhappy about in terms of our performance? That was the key thing that they told us was, you're slow to fund. We're happy with everything else, but you're very slow to fund. And when we did comparisons and benchmarks, we actually found exactly the same thing in the data. Our competitors were funding faster than we were, and therefore this was the key metric from a customer experience point of view that we focused on driving improvement to for a year. And obviously a lot of that data that came from back-end systems, there would have been other data sitting behind that as to how long it takes moving from different departments, etc. This is another example. I worked in HSBC for a few years. I was lucky enough to spend 6 months down in Brazil. And what we did in this example, and I thought it might be applicable here, not to tell you about my globetrotting excursions, but more from an IT perspective. I thought it was good because often lean is looked at on the factory floor as something that the staff can do. The way we did it here was very strategic. What we looked at was how are customers paying bills. So what we found was that there was over 100 million bills being paid by customers in Brazil through HSBC. And what we found was a large percentage of those, about 44, 45, 46%, were coming into the branch network. So the tellers were paying the bills on behalf of the customers. And what we were trying to do was use channel migration. So what we found, I suppose, is obviously if you pay a bill on the mobile yourself, or if you pay a bill on internet banking, which most of us in Ireland and the UK do, obviously those bills go what we call straight through. So straight through processing. Nobody has to really get involved in actually manually entering data into systems or processing the bill payments. However, what we found here was about 45%, so almost half of all the bill payments in Brazil were actually being processed manually by tellers. And over time, what we wanted to do is basically reduce that volume down so that we had a much smaller volume of manual payments, and we had a much higher volume going through straight through processing channels, basically through technology systems, whether that was the ATM or whether it was internet banking or whether it was through the mobile. But basically, it's a way of looking at lean from a very holistic point of view. So we didn't use a whole lot of lean tools. We used more of the concept of lean, where we had customers doing a lot of the self-serve, opening up channels for customers so that they could actually make payments on mobile, etc. So I suppose that was one of my learnings in that project, was look at lean from a strategic, holistic perspective rather than just looking at it from a factory floor. I should check how I'm doing for time. Okay, I should be done. All right. I suppose one of the key things is making sure that we sustain the improvements that have been implemented. One of the ways of doing that is obviously control charts, control plans. Another one is balanced scorecards. Here's an example of one we used for a previous organization. And one of the key things I look for is, are there leading indicators as well as lagging indicators on there? So are there things that are going to predict your performance before it happens rather than just reporting what's happened? Good example being sales tells you what's happened, your revenue numbers. Leading indicator might be the number of bids you've gotten in your pipeline. I suppose the other thing, from a lean is also involved in making sure that we build a culture of change across the organization. It's good from an employee engagement point of view. And I think it's a good way of retaining employees if you build skills within the workforce, build continuous improvement skills. So a lot of organizations have got a lean journey or lean training journey. It generally starts with white belt training, which is usually a couple of hours online, half day online. Then it usually goes to yellow belt training, which is usually about 1 day continuous improvement training, and then you have the option of doing a project. Green belt training is usually 5 days, black belt training goes on 15 days, etc. So what you get is, I suppose, at the bottom level, if you take large organizations, like they tend to train all their people in white belt or yellow belt. And the previous organization we've worked with, most of them would do that. They would train their full staff in 1 day yellow belt training to give them that culture to try and build that culture of continuous improvement within their workforce. Whereas obviously when you get up through the pyramid, you only need a small number of green belts to actually deliver projects and training, because they're basically your process specialists. And on the last slide, I just give an example of a couple of credentials. A recent company we worked with in Ireland is a company called Accountants Online, based in Donegal, where we basically did a lean project, mapped out a number of their key processes and made improvements to it. And the second one is a company here in the UK called Ferry, where we used a combination of lean and office robotics to automate a lot of what they did in their finance function. I'm going to stop there. Our website's there on the right-hand side if you want to find out any more, or I'm happy to answer any questions if you want afterwards. I'll stop there and see if there's any questions.
Thanks, TJ. That was very insightful. I previously obviously came across yourself when I was working with my previous employer when they went on their lean journey. So I know, it's obviously a good bit about it, but I just have a couple of questions here that I wanted to ask you. And one of them is there something that a company have to do before engaging with a lean consultant like yourself? Is there anything they should do in advance?
No, I suppose I think Leanne is going to talk a little bit about the grants and what's available from Enterprise Ireland. So there is some good supports out there from Enterprise Ireland and IDA. I think you should definitely consider them and use them. But no, I think, as long as the company is, I suppose, has some of those criteria we talked about. So it definitely needs to be a burning platform. So they need to be clear on, what's the direction that the organization wants to go, and what are some of the burning platforms that they have internally that need to be resolved. And I think they're some of the key things from a strategic perspective kind of need to be in place before people start on their lean journey.
Perfect. So they're doing their planning beforehand anyway. I was really jealous that you got to drive a Tesla. I just thought I'd throw that in there. And I love the picture actually that you had on your slide. I was going, that's my next company car. It's absolutely gorgeous.
I don't have one. But I really think if anybody's interested in finding out what a good customer experience looks like, if you do like cars, go take a Tesla for a test drive, because the customer experience you get and what they've really brought to the market and the products and services that go along with it, I've never seen it anywhere else. And certainly not in that industry. I mean, it's definitely the biggest innovation that, a lot of people talk about Tesla, the big innovation they've brought is electric. For me, it's not really. Actually, a lot of the stuff is the customer experience that comes around driving it. And apart from, having to worry about charging it every now and again, which is a worry, the other parts of it is all very pleasurable.
Brilliant. And then I suppose just when you were mentioning the different belts, so your white belt, your yellow belt, your green belt, if somebody say, obviously you're starting at your white belt, how long does it take for a person to become a black belt? Or is it based on how much time they put in themselves? I want to be a black belt. Just putting it out there.
You want to be a black belt, okay.
So how long is it going to take me?
Yeah, I mean, it's I think a lot of it's driven by, I suppose there's a few factors. One is the interest of the individual. I'd say that's probably the most important in terms of the speed of getting there. I suppose the support of the organization is key as well. And I mentioned that I got certified when I was in Dell 20 years ago. And during that time, Dell put a huge amount of money into bringing in external trainers to get us all trained up and get us certified. So a lot of it is, it takes time. I think it was about, for most people, it's about 3 years from this time, 2 to 3 years from the time they start at white belt, yellow belt, till the time they get certified all the way through to black belt if they want to take it all that far. And there's even after that, there are external agencies. So for example, I encourage people to do an external examination called the ASQ, American Society of Quality. And that's an external qualification that's recognized across all industries. And it basically says you have a certain standard of lean that can basically be applied across industry. So I think there's lots of opportunities, lots of qualification. And I think in these days, and John mentioned start as well, where a lot of organizations struggling to retain employees, and there's a lot of competition for employees in the market. I think it's a good way of actually getting employees engaged with your organization and helping you retain employees. Because for example, in Dell Computers a number of years ago, most of us never left there for about 6 years until we had gone fully through the certification program. And it was a great way of getting, I think it's a great way of getting employees retained at the organization.
Yeah, they're committing themselves to it. There's a message there now in the chat box. How do management systems like ISO 9001, 14001 and 45001 fit with lean initiatives, sorry.
Yeah, that's probably a long discussion, but in general, they align pretty well. And I think, one of the things I think that's quite good that comes out of lean is you will have your processes documented, right? And that's a key benefit And from the last organization you were in,
Yeah.
that's one of the things we used it for. So I think that's where lean continuous improvement can help. It'll help you map out your processes. It'll help make sure that your processes or people are following your processes. And obviously from a procedure point of view, that'll all help in terms of your ISO documentation and your different quality standards. So I think I would say it reinforces it. Obviously it brings some change, but as long as that change is reflected back into your quality manuals and your procedure manuals, I think they work pretty well hand in hand.
Very good. And just mentioning ISO, with a lot of companies, do you feel that the role of the person who's leading team within an organization ends up, it's the quality manager or the person who's looking after ISO?
Yeah, who sponsors the initiative?
Yeah, who will kind of lead it?
Yeah, it can be. I think there's, some organizations would have it sitting within their strategy team, if they have a strategy team, or it might sit within their planning team. But yeah, it often sits within the quality function. Generally, I recommend it sits somewhere in operations, somewhere on the operations team. And that could be the reporting into chief operating officer or somebody within operations. So, and the advantage of that is because generally we start in operations, sometimes in finance, but generally we start in operations where you're actually going to be driving the improvements. Ops teams tend to have the biggest opportunities for lean. They tend to have the biggest initiatives. So it's definitely one place you can do it. Or else, I suppose I have seen organizations where the continuous improvement person would sit within finance. And that might be because, it's really key for that organization that their improvement initiatives are linked to cost reduction, for example. And they may have a cost initiative ongoing within their finance team. So I think where they sit, probably not that important. It's probably more the mindset that they have, and having that full visibility to the organization, having the ability to, I suppose, see where the organization is going, and making sure that the lean initiatives are helping drive the organization in that direction.
Very good. Perfect. Well, thanks so much, TJ. And if anybody has more questions, just pop them in the chat box. And if we don't get to them at the end of today, we'll definitely send emails through with answers to your questions. So thanks again, TJ, for a start.
Thanks, Lee. I'll go on mute.
Perfect. So now we're going to hand it over to Callum Poole. Callum, I nearly called you Callum Best there earlier, so I apologise. You're not George Best's son, but if you're ready,
no,
Callum,
I'm definitely not. I'm not that old. Thank you very much,
Lisa. No, you're definitely not that old.
No, I'm not.
So yeah, if we can hand over to yourself, Callum, to do our demo, that'd be great.
Great stuff. Thanks very much, and thanks very much, TJ. That was very interesting. So as Lisa said there at the start, I manage the customer experience team in Herbst Software, and as John said at the start, he gave a little bit of information about Herbst Software and who we are. Herbst Software we're a business management software developer. We're an Irish company, and we develop, sell, and support our own business management software across a wide variety of industries. And the software naturally feeds in with lean initiatives by the very nature of being a fully integrated business management software with that provides live information and integrates business processes. So over the next half an hour or so, I'm going to show you just kind of a snapshot of those elements of the system that can really make a difference, with a particular focus on the warehouse and the factory floor and some remote workers as well, whereby we can really save time and add value to the organization by eliminating paperwork and bringing live information from all areas of the business to one central location. Not only do these aspects of the system add value to our customers, they also add value to their customers by being able to provide their clients with live pieces of information through things like our web portal and so on. So I'll just start sharing my screen there now, and we will be able to run through that for the next half an hour. So as I was saying, we are a fully integrated business management software provider. This is our system. This is what the system looks like when you log in. And even the way this home screen is laid out leads to an element of efficiencies, because basically behind each of these buttons is what you need, a view that you want to see, a favorite view. So instead of having to click down 3 or 4 levels to get the information that you need, at the touch of a button, you have the information that you need here rather than 3 or 4 clicks. Okay, so what I'm going to touch on today is our kiosks, and focusing on our goods in, our goods out, our production, and I will also look at our jobber app, which is mobile timesheets for anybody in the engineering job costing space, where they have remote workers or workers who would be on site. Okay, so I'm going to just focus on the goods in kiosk now for a couple of minutes, and the idea and the philosophy behind the kiosks is that they're easy to use, they are intuitive, they're touch screen, and they bring information that would traditionally be on paper into a system at the point of entry, rather than having a lag of information and so on. So if I start here on my current goods in schedule, this is working off purchase orders. So traditionally, maybe purchase orders will be raised, the products will arrive at the door, somebody takes that piece of paper, signs it, hands it up to an accounts office or something like that, that they will then put the receipt docket or the purchase invoice into the system, and the stock is then in the system. There might be a lag of a couple of hours, there might be a lag of a day, and ultimately, you know, you're missing out on live information, and 2 or 3 people have to touch that piece of paper to actually get it done. So the kiosks are trying to eliminate the lag in information, and that 3 and 4 people have to touch that paper to actually get where you need to. Okay, so these are touchscreen. So I'm just going to hit my enter key or plus key here as well. And it speaks to you. So, you know, if anybody has warehouse staff or production staff who maybe they haven't got a good command of the English language or aren't very computer, here it's nice and bright, it's colorful, and everything is kind of laid out in front of you. So what I have here is the purchase order items. So nobody really has to think about what's been ordered, have I got everything, etc. Pulls it up here and it tells you. Okay, so I can use my barcode scanner if the items are barcoded. Okay, and I can, and in addition to receiving in the goods and, you know, eliminating that paperwork, there are additional elements here. So we can reject items if anything is damaged. We can also print labels, and there are quality checks available as well. Okay, and if any items that you have or receive in or have from a supplier are not barcoded, that's not an issue. We can use or touch the screen and receive the items in that way instead. Okay. So you can see here up in my little general tab here, it's giving me a little warning. As I was saying, there are quality checks here. The quality check individual items are on the overall load, and we can have a number of quality checks. I just have one here, for example, pass or fail. And it gives me all the information. Everything in the system is time and date stamped. And I hit confirm there. I can add in any comments if I need to. The supplier's reference, so that might be the delivery docket number. And the person who receives it in signs for it. Okay. So we find that that's a key bit for people in any organization. If you are bringing something into the business or dispatching something or anything like that, and you put your name to it, you're going to want to make sure that it's correct. So I've created my receipt docket here. And as I was saying at the start, the idea is that you are getting that information into the system and into the business live. Okay. And just to give you an example, we have a customer in the manufacturing industry who uses these kiosks. And by implementing these, you know, not necessarily as part of a lean journey or anything like that, they were able to save 8 hours a week through the use of the kiosks. And that is because that was really moving paper around was the big time saving there. You know, simply in terms of step count and the number of times somebody had to go over and back to an office every day just to hand a piece of paper over or to, and then, you end up having a chat or something like that. So that was, one working day every week is a significant cost saving just from implementing something like this without going on an overall lean transformation journey.
The NCI students, I would count
Yeah.
the current one.
Say that again, sorry. Sorry, did somebody have a question there?
I think somebody just wasn't muted, Colin.
Ah, right. Okay, no problem. No problem. So, as I was saying, we have one of these for production as well. Okay, so the production element, we have full manufacturing capability in the system with bill of materials. And for any of you who are in industries where batch management is required, such as food, or anybody requires recording serial numbers or anything like that, we have full traceability from farm to fork built into the system. Okay. So my current production schedule, I have scheduled, this is my schedule. This is what I'm making on a given day. And the works order is behind this product. And it tells me in order to make 10 of these LED IP67 lights, here's the raw material I require and the quantities. Okay. So again, some of our customers have gone down the route of incorporating quality checks and check sheets into their kiosks as well, if they wish. And if I use more or less of anything that I have that I've specified on my bill of material, I can simply just put in whatever quantity I use, and the cost and the raw materials will be as stated. Okay, and then as I was saying earlier on, for anything that I don't have code for, I can simply input it, and I'm just going to say I use 9 of these. And if I need to put anything, print any labels or anything like that, I can print labels as well. Okay. I can put in here my. Oh, sorry, my screen is gone there. Can everybody still see my screen?
No, I can't see it, Colin. I can just see it yourself.
Oh, sorry, I don't know what happened there. Apologies.
Yeah, it's starting to share now. Yeah, I can see it now.
Yeah, so you can see that there now.
Yeah,
sorry.
and indeed, no problem.
Hit the screen there by accident. So I've just literally just come now to, you haven't missed anything there anyway. I have my finished product, and I'm now saying that I've made this. And I know what will happen now when I finish this element off is I will take the raw material out of stock and put the finished goods into stock. Okay, and if this is a production where there are multiple people or multiple lines involved in the overall production process, at any stage I can log off the job, assign it to another user, and the next user or the next manufacturing individual can pick up the job and carry it on from there. And likewise, if there's any sub-assembly processes or anything like that involved, they can be picked up along the way. And now somebody signs for it, and even that can be something like a quality person maybe takes the final junk on the journey and finishes the job and signs for it. Okay, so again, you're eliminating a number of pieces of paper there and a number of steps in the manufacturing process by using the production kiosks. And then we will move on to the dispatch side of things. The same thing again. We also have a trucker app, so for electronic POD, which I'll discuss in a few minutes. So this is my current dispatch schedule, and this information can be stripped right back. So we can see, maybe yesterday's and things that are, a couple of days into the future. So everybody in the warehouse has an idea of what is what's being dispatched. Okay. So again, I can scan or not, depending on what the information is or isn't. And I can print labels at this stage too. So the whole idea of these kiosks is trying to get your warehouse to go completely paperless as much as possible, and to feed various departments with live information as required. If we have any hauliers or anything like that, we can assign courier or haulier to that, and we can go from there, and we can go and do delivery docket. Sorry, and that is the dispatch process then from the kiosk. So again, we're saving information there, saving paper, bringing live information to accounts payable and accounts receivable, and also affecting all of the various stock and batch management in the warehouse as required. Okay. So that's kind of very much the manufacturing, the factory floor, and the warehouse. Okay. So I'll just stop there for a minute before I move on to the timesheets and that, and see, does anybody have any questions?
There's nothing in the chat box, column.
Okay. Okay. So what I'll do is I just have a video here of our Jobber app, and as I was saying, our Jobber app is for anybody in the job costing engineering side of things who has maybe traditionally got paper-based timesheets, and again, not being fed live information around the job, and the information is coming back maybe at the end of a week, which can have an effect on, stock. It can have an effect on how soon you can invoice certain elements of the job. So we have this Jobber app which interfaces live with the system and updates the job in real time, giving you that live information. Okay, so I'm just going to play a video here and just talk over it. Okay, so this is an individual would log on here to the job, and they can see whatever jobs they're assigned to, and they can be given a classification, urgent, quick turnaround required, and so on. So they only see whatever jobs they're assigned. So if I log into this job here, I can see where the job is at in terms of its admin status, what the various fields here are stating the job, where the job is at. And when I log into the job, I press my start button and brings me in then, and I can start working on the job. Okay. And once I log into the job, I would pick whatever activity I'm doing. And basically, once I pick the activity, if there's a charge rate on that, a little tick box will start going in, or a little clock will start ticking away there in the background. So you're calculating the hours and the time being added up, and that's feeding back into the system live. So you're getting live work in progress information. And as I consume any products then within the system, that's taking away out of stock, out of the job, and it's feeding the information back into the job then as job input transfer, and the costs are being accumulated too. Okay. And in addition to that, as would be common on a lot of job sites, you can take pictures. So if there's anything goes wrong on the job, or anything maybe needs to be analyzed, or something needs to be, a picture needs to be taken at each step of the job to say, we've now done our disassembly, we are now moving on to our assessment. We can do that at any stage. And if I have done anything maybe at the end of the job or during the project that reaches a milestone, so for example, I've moved on from tech analysis and we're now going to dipping and baking, I can change that to say, right, we've now moved from milestone 1 is complete, milestone 2 is now ready. And Also, if we're on site and we have a conversation with a customer or a stakeholder on the project, we can put in our contact or correspondence of that, just so everybody has complete and total visibility of what's going on the job, from something as simple as a conversation to obviously the important information around costs and charges associated with that. Okay. And once I log off the job, I will change the status if required, and I keep that in the job then. And this feeds back live to the back office and back into the company to give you some information on that as well. Okay. And I'm going to finish off on, as you can see here on my screen, we have a range of apps available for mobile workforce, be it sales reps, delivery drivers, and anybody who was on the factory floor or in the warehouse, or spread out across a large premises. So I'm going to just show you our app here, because it's quite powerful, and it enables you to do a large number of documents, so long as you have the access rights to do them by scanning. So I'm just going to do a sales order here. Okay. And what this enables me to do is, I can give this a name, and I can start my scan. So I can be anywhere within the business, so long as I have Wi-Fi and my barcode scanner. I can scan away here, and basically what I'm doing is I'm building my order here because I'm doing a sales order. Okay. And once I end my scan and I finish building my order, if maybe, we have a customer who is a plant nursery, and a staff member might go and walk the nursery with them, 25, 30 acres, and they scan as they go, and they press end scan, and then the customer can go back in to the point of sale. So if any of you are in have retail space or anything like that, they go back into the point of sale or to the order counter, and they say, look, it's Callum Poole. I was just walking around there with Lisa, and I am just going to pull up my order there. So I can go in here to my add product and product bulk entry, import from my scan app, and here is my order. So the order there has been built from whatever I've been doing there, going and scanning around. Okay, so when I save that there, I've created my sales order, or my sales invoice, or whatever the document is. It can be a purchase order, it can be a location transfer, or anything like that as well. Okay, so as you can see there, quite powerful tools there for something simple, like just elimination paperwork that feeds into the overall lean journey, and in addition to obviously implementing something like a business management system that can lead to organizational transformation in a variety of ways. Okay, so that's me. If anybody has any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat there, or to unmute and speak away. Thank you all very much for your time. I hope you felt it was informative, and we'll hand over to Leanna there now in a second.
Thanks for that, Colin. One thing that just, obviously, I know the product, but one thing that I've really noticed is how, with the lean journey, how they do link in, like getting rid of the paper and stuff like that. It really is a tool that will help on the lean journey, going with a software system like Herbst.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I just gave one example there where you can quantify time, 8 hours a week there on the factory floor, just by me going to you, 4 or 5 times a day, 5 days a week, and then you going to someone else, 4 or 5 times a day, 5 days a week, and simply just moving paper around, and probably having a chat as well. You can save a full working day there very easily.
Yeah, and somebody had said to me there recently, who had different premises, that like the docket actually had to go to another office. So having to get in the car, drive down with dockets, and you might get a couple of people having to do that. So you're getting rid of the time wasting and stuff like that. It's all in real time. So
Yeah, exactly. And as you said there, like, yeah, moving dockets around, it's not live.
Yeah.
So, you know, the whole philosophy of the kiosks there is to try and get that live information and have the information entered by one person.
Yeah.
And touch person rather than 3 people, and it's still not live.
Yeah. And like when you think about it, even if you were going to do something like stock take and you haven't got your dockets on time, your stock's all over the place. Nothing's going to match, you know, so yeah, it does.
Exactly,
really
because they haven't been entered in yet.
Exactly, yeah. And if somebody gets it on a Friday, it might be a Monday or Tuesday before it's done. So, you know, so very good.
Yeah.
Perfect. So does anybody have any questions there? Can you identify? There's a question there in the chat box. Can you identify customers where a specific ingredient batch number was used?
Say that again, Lisa, sorry.
Can you identify customers where a specific ingredient batch number was used?
Yes, there's full traceability in the system. So if in the event of a recall, like we're seeing in the news at the moment there with Dunn's and Lidl and Centra, we can identify the customer by batch number. And if there's an affected batch, we can recall by customer. So we've got full farm to fork traceability.
Perfect. Brilliant. Does anybody else have any more questions, or shall we move on to Liana? I think we'll move on. Liana, so I'm going to share for you because I have your
slides.
Your slides here. No problem at all. Just bear with me 1 second.
No hassle. Thank you, Lisa. I'm Liana Hilliard. I'm a business development manager within Herbst. I'm going to try and keep this short and sweet for you because I know we're over time, but I'm going to try and empower you with some grant information to help you on the journey through Enterprise Island.
Yeah.
So the first slide is I've pinpointed the 4 kind of key grants that we would come across with our own customer base on a day-to-day basis. What I'll do is I'll outline the grants, but then what you'd have to do is go to your local enterprise office. There's 31 of them located. So Lean Start would be a great place to start. Lean Start it's creating the framework, putting together a roadmap, and making improvements on where you currently are. And it would consist of 7 days consultancy over typically an 8 to 12 week period. Then you gear towards Lean Plus. Lean Plus would be mid-level companies. You would have a maximum project value of 50%. So say, for example, the value of the project would be 100,000, then that would be 50,000. Then we would gear towards then the Lean transfer. I can't even speak. Sorry, Lean Transform, which is focused on larger organisations that would be a mixture of different rates depending on company size, how they categorise them. 50% being the larger companies, medium size would be 60%, and then the smaller companies would be 70%. So, but going to your local enterprise office, they'd be able to go through and gear you towards what would be suitable for each company's requirements. Then you've got the digitalisation grant that would go hand in hand with the Lean Start. It would facilitate for companies to work with third parties to look at your current processes. See, sometimes when you're looking at your own processes, when you're stuck into it, it's good to sometimes have a third party to have a look, because they might see something that you won't see. So it's allowing you to bring that in, giving you a value of a grant up to £9,000 on that. Then we would have other grants that are available. The other grants, there's just a key list of them, but what we can do at the end of this is send you over the information through the power slide so you can see it, and then there's contact details there for Enterprise Island, just to give you a general overview on it. I don't know if anyone has any questions or.
Brilliant, thanks for that, Liana. It's good to see that the Enterprise Island are giving out the grants, you know, and particularly at these times, you know, when people need it, you know.
That's it, and to support them as well on their journey,
exactly,
and
yeah.
to bring it to the next level, and it's to engage with them at that level, you know.
Exactly.
I did keep it short and sweet. I didn't want
yeah,
to
well, that's
the lunchtime.
That's perfect, Liana. Well, look, if nobody has any more questions, thanks to everybody for attending, and thanks to John, TJ, Colin, and Liana as well. And what we'll do is we'll send out a copy of the recording to you guys. So, you know, if there's anything you want to touch back on, or if there's, you know, even like Liana was saying, to be able to see the grants and stuff like that, we'll send them on to you. And if you have any questions at all, you know, feel free to reach out to any of us, and I'd be more than happy to help you.